Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Russia's foreign minister arrives in Chad on the last leg of his tour of Africa. Sergei Lavrov promises more military support to Burkina Faso, Congo and others, whilst telling his hosts that Western partners want Russia's punishment more than Africa's peace. Also, South Korea's business relationship with Africa sprouts even more branches as more countries from the continent join its Rice Initiative off the back of a landmark conference welcoming dozens of African delegates. And it's one of the most unique and sought-after tastes in the world. Producers of Cameroon's Penja white pepper have been battling for customers to not accept any substitutes because despite it being a protected brand, pretenders are still widely on sale at local markets. But first, Russia's foreign minister arrived in Chad on Wednesday after pledging to give more military support and kit to Burkina Faso on his earlier stop there. Sergei Lavrov was in Ouagadougou whilst on his most recent tour of the continent, as Moscow continues courting more diplomatic support from Africa and works on deepening divisions between the continent and the West. Burkina Faso has increasingly turned to Russia for help as it struggles to rein in extremist violence that's been plaguing the country for the last 8 years. Sophie Lamott tells us more.
4 countries in just 3 days. As Sergei Lavrov continues his tour of African nations, he met with Transitional President Ibrahim Traoré in Ouagadougou on Wednesday. Since the military coup in October 2022, both countries have strengthened ties, particularly in the defense and security sector.
Russian instructors are working here, and their number will increase. At the same time, we provide training to the representatives of Burkina Faso armed forces and law enforcement officers in Russia.
Russia has been winning hearts and minds in West Africa, notably thanks to propaganda videos like this one circulating on social media, claiming Russia could bring peace to conflict-ridden Sahel. Essentially stepping in and succeeding where the West has failed. As discontent grows against France's former colonial power, as well as US presence on the continent, Lavrov continues to surf on this anti-Western rhetoric.
As for the French instructors, I have reason to believe that they're already working in Ukraine. Regardless of whether they are members of the French armed forces or simply mercenaries, they represent an absolutely legitimate target for our armed forces.
But security isn't the only item on the agenda. When it comes to trade, Moscow's involvement in Africa lags behind Europe. In 2023, Russia only traded 15 billion euros with African nations, compared to over 300 billion euros worth of commerce between Europe and Africa that same year. In Guinea a few days ago, Lavrov met with his local counterparts to renew their intentions for closer economic cooperation, increased trade and access to mineral resources.
South Africa's ANC party says that it's leaning towards trying to form a broad coalition with some of its smaller rivals to create a national unity government. The party's been scrambling to settle on a way forward since last week's election saw it lose its parliamentary majority for the first time since 1994. It now has to share power and has reportedly been talking to 5 parties, some like the Free Marketer Democratic Alliance and the Marxist Economic Freedom Fighters have some very different views on the way the country should run and may be far from keen from working with each other. The ANC says that it's certain that it can find a way forward.
The current situation has created some uncertainties and risks, but also opportunities to move the country forward, more determined to tackle the problems its people face, more determined to unite and face the future together as South Africans. The ANC is committed to ensure that we unite the people of South Africa to move our country forward and form a government that reflects the message from the electorate, which is the message that says we must all work together.
Well, South Africans are still hoping that the deadlock won't get in the way of delivering the across-the-board change for the better that many have long hoped for from the ANC.
They had the chance, they ruined it, and now they've got no choice but to do it. It's quite interesting to see how it's going to all turn out, but I think it's going to be very great to see how the government is going to put South African first, right? Being the party that has dominated over 30 years, and now pairs with different perspectives from different parties. Hopefully it might shift certain things, because sometimes we stay too much on our own narratives mindset, right? So I think working with other parties might help them to adapt to certain policies from other parties that might be very beneficial for everyone in South Africa.
Now, corruption was one of the big concerns that eroded popular support for the ANC over the years. On Wednesday, the Minister for Sport, Art and Culture appeared in court after having been arrested over allegations of bribery. Zizi Kodwa is a senior member of the ANC and is accused of having accepted $90,000 in kickbacks from a businessman whilst he was the party's national spokesman. Meanwhile, a maiden summit which has seen South Korea welcome the representatives of 48 African countries to its capital as part of a push to boost business ties with the continent wrapped up on Wednesday. The two-day meeting was part of the Asian nations' outreach to Africa in a bid to boost access to and investment in trade, tech, mining and more. And around 50 deals have been struck so far. Possibility also blossomed on the agricultural front, with 4 more nations from the continent signing up for a Korean project aimed at ramping up rice production in Africa. Our correspondent in Seoul tells us more.
Today, Angola, Madagascar, Malawi and Zimbabwe entered the K-Rice Belt project. K stands for Korea, as it is an official assistance development project organized by South Korea on the African continent. There are currently 10 countries that are already part of the project, including Senegal. Its Minister of Agriculture considered that this partnership is important for the future of his country.
L'Afrique importe plus de 35 milliards de dollars.
Africa imports more than $35 billion to feed itself. If we do nothing, this could go up to more than $100 billion. If I take Senegal as an example, Korea helps us produce good quality certified seeds. These help meet food demand on a large scale and could help the continent reach self-sufficiency.
What Korea does is that they supply some specific rice seeds that are more resistant and more fruitful alongside with the specific agricultural technology. According to the Korean Minister of Agriculture, the aim of this partnership is to help Africa achieve agricultural development. But this agricultural diplomacy is also a way for Korea to try and open African market to its companies related to Korean food or to agricultural gears and technologies.
Now, a geographical indication is a mark of authenticity that a product comes from a specific place, and a mark of quality that can reassure customers on the lookout for certain characteristics in their purchases. Now, one of the products protected by the African Intellectual Property Organization under the geographical indications is the spicy uniqueness of Penja white pepper, produced on Cameroon's coast. Our correspondent sent us this report.
This 3-hectare white pepper plantation lies in Penja in the Mongo division of Cameroon. Rosalie owns the land. She's one of Cameroon's oldest female white pepper farmers and still uses traditional techniques for cultivating her crops.
The Penja white pepper is so special because it is grown on volcanic land and it is done in a very natural way. We don't need fertilizers or pesticides.
A few kilometers away, the popular crop is harvested by around 400 members of the brand. The seeds go through strict quality control processes after this. René Claude Metomo has headed the brand since 2011. He keeps an eye on things and makes sure customers can count on getting the real deal when they buy the plantation's white pepper.
If you're looking for a Penja pepper, there is only one criteria. If you go to a supermarket, the packs are stamped IGP, Penja white pepper. It's an official stamp. This means that on that stamp, there's a number which can enable us to trace the origin of the product.
400 tons of white pepper are produced each year between November and April, with 40% of that reserved for exportation. It can be tough to keep hold of Penja white pepper's market share. Its producers lose income as sellers in local markets often try to pass off other types of pepper as being from Penja. In a bid to regulate the sector, the African Intellectual Property Organization set up an international conference on branding recently in Douala, the economic capital of Cameroon.
Amongst the member states, we have a certain number of products with a geographical label, and we have noticed that on the markets, these products sell twice or 3 times more than the products with no label. It creates added value.
Penja white pepper was the first product from sub-Saharan Africa to get a designation of origin and quality awarded by the European Union in 2013.
I know what I'm going to be on the lookout for my next curry. That, though, is it for Eye on Africa. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.
In 2002, the Indian state of Gujarat erupted into religious violence, with anti-Muslim riots after a train carrying Hindu pilgrims burned to the ground. At the time, the governor of Gujarat was Narendra Modi.
Mr. Jaffrey came out and told the crowd, "You can kill me, but please spare the children and women." But the rioters did not listen. To save us, Mr. Jaffrey called Modi, all the leaders, all the ministers.
In this election year, against a backdrop of Hindu nationalism, the ghosts of the past are re-emerging.
It's a big scar in the Indian history. They can pretend that they're forgetting, they can pretend that it never happened, they can never erase it.
The 2002 Gujarat riots revisited on France 24 and France24.com.
À 16h34 et 33 secondes, on a reçu une notification nous indiquant qu'il y a une personne qui était rentrée dans la zone interdite. Ces 8 événements, c'est par exemple la détection d'intrusion de personnes ou de véhicules dans des zones interdites, c'est de la détection de bagages abandonnés dans les gares ou dans les stations de métro, de la détection de situations dans lesquelles il y a une affluence qui est anormalement élevée. Moi, je fais souvent l'analogie sur le fonctionnement de notre logiciel avec des ombres chinoises. En fait, notre logiciel, lui, ce qu'il regarde, c'est des silhouettes. Et il regarde que la forme. Donc, est-ce que c'est plutôt la silhouette d'une personne, la silhouette d'un scooter, la silhouette ou le gabarit d'un véhicule? On s'intéresse juste à l'objet et la scène dans son contexte, donc des événements. Est-ce qu'il y a un véhicule qui est rentré dans une zone interdite? On envoie un signalement à un opérateur vidéo et c'est lui ensuite qui analyse plus précisément la situation pour prendre une décision.
Le fait que l'industrie et les entreprises disent qu'il n'y a pas de traitement de données biométriques, c'est vraiment une stratégie de communication pour minimiser en fait ce que fait vraiment cette technologie. Cette technologie, elle analyse ce qui se passe dans l'espace public. Dans l'espace public, il y a des humains, il y a des corps humains, donc c'est impossible de dire qu'il n'y a pas d'atteinte à la vie privée, aux données personnelles. On va être classifié en permanence sur la base de notre corps, sur la base de nos déplacements, sur la base de nos comportements, de nos démarches, de ce qu'on fait. Donc ça, c'est de l'intime, c'est de la biométrie. Les entreprises qui fabriquent pousse à ce qu'il y ait une légalisation sur le long terme. Et donc il y a cette volonté-là, et les Jeux Olympiques ici sont apparus comme un instrument parfait pour accélérer ce calendrier et pour instrumentaliser en fait cet événement qui est en fait exceptionnel, où les gens ont un sentiment d'insécurité qui est plus fort, et donc ça paraît plus acceptable de légaliser cette technologie.